earlier, we heard about government continuing to overspend. The audit outcomes report for the 2020-2021 financial year has painted a bleak picture. Although there was some improvement, there was still 50 billion rand in irregular spending. The Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, was presenting the audit outcomes of the last financial year earlier today. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Professor Jannie Rossouw, the Interim Head of the WITS Business School. Prof, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Some improvement in terms of clean audits, but irregular spending seems to be a big headache for government, contributing to a lot of overspending, according to the Auditor General today.
Good afternoon, Dan, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, indeed. The Auditor General again reported irregular and other expenditure problems in her report. We must be very grateful in South Africa that the Auditor General's office is one area in our whole structure that has not been negatively affected by state capture, of course. We still get audit reports that we can rely on, and we get information that help us to understand what goes on in South Africa, and for that we must be very grateful. The concern, however, is the Auditor General makes these findings year after year after year, and there are simply no consequences. It is as if the government has an inability to respond to and to act on these negative findings by the Auditor General.
Yeah, but you should point out, as you say, that while we have that over 50 billion rand in irregular expenditure, it has come down year on year from around 67 billion rand. So there is a bit of improvement, but it's not time to celebrate.
No, this is no time to celebrate. We want zero there. I mean, after all, we are talking about our tax money. It is our hard-earned tax money that the government is wasting. And we as taxpayers expect better from the government. We expect better from government departments. Number one, they must look better after our money. And number two, when the money is misappropriated or not well spent, there must be consequences to prevent this going on, even though on a declining trend. We want none of this going forward.
You know, I've just been listening for the last hour or so to the public protector, the acting public protector, Advocate Zalega, presenting last year's report in terms of investigations and talking about the issue of procurement, like in the case of these medical ambulances, scooter ambulances in the Eastern Cape, which she found to have been improperly procured. And the Auditor General today saying that there's an issue around non-compliance in terms of a lack of transparency in procurement, and that contributes to some of this irregular expenditure.
Yes, Dan, you are quite right. The only way to resolve this problem once and for all in South Africa is to pass legislation that all government departments at central government level, all government departments at provincial government level, and all municipalities must publish all their contracts for public scrutiny. It's the only way that we will get away from this recurring problem that we see in South Africa. We need complete public scrutiny. There's no reason for any confidentiality in any of these contracts. After all, the government enter into these contracts for the account of the South African taxpayers. Why can't we have insight in what they are doing with our money?
Prof, do you think that kind of transparency will be sufficient to deal with this supply chain management non-compliance culture? It looks like there is a non-compliance culture in how they handle public procurement.
It will probably not be sufficient, but it will go a long way towards helping to get rid of this. We will need more. We will need continued audits. We will need continued work by the public protector, etc. So my idea will not get rid of the problem. It will help to resolve the problem. But yes, it's one suggestion of a series of steps that we need to take.
Yeah, and of course there has to be consequence.
There must be consequences. And the problem in South Africa, we no longer see consequences. Mr. Zuma fails to pitch up at the Zondo Commission. He fails to follow a constitutional court order, and up to now, this moment, there has been no consequences. Now, Mr. Zuma is a former president of this country. He's subject to the constitution of this country, not above it, but there are no consequences. With such an example being set, other people seem to get the impression that they can do what they want to because there are no consequences.
Yeah. Finally, Prof, I mean, the Auditor General mentioning that there's a need for fairness and injecting a little bit of competitive behavior in the procurement process. Do you think when they are published for comment, that will help in terms of injecting a little bit of competitiveness? Because currently it's not transparent, it's handled in the dark, so to speak, and then people get awarded, and then you find that it was all improper.
Well, Dan, there are two issues here. The one is publishing contracts that had already been concluded for public scrutiny. You make a very valid point that I've not thought of, is taking it one step further. In other words, publishing these contracts for public scrutiny and comment before they become effective, before they are signed, before they are executed. You make a very good point here that I will have to think through structurally, but your idea might take my idea even further. So I like your idea on this one. Yes, it will move us forward to get out of this problem.
Yeah, it's not my idea. I took it from the Auditor General's comment. Thank you very much, Professor Jannie Rossouw, the Interim Head of the WITS Business School.